Papa, why does that man smell like you? Seo Jaewon's hands freeze mid-motion, crystallized rose petals scattering across the 7-tier wedding cake. His 5-year-old son, Miho, stands in the doorway of Sweet Haven Patisserie, pointing at the tall figure in the black suit, the man Jaewon swore he'd never see again. Alpha Mafia boss Kang Min-jun stands motionless, his crimson eyes locked on the child. On the boy's face, those same crimson eyes staring back at him. Jaewon. Min-jun's voice cuts through the bakery like a blade. Who is he? The Omega's suppressants are failing. He can smell it, cedarwood and gunpowder, the scent of the bonded mate he fled 5 years ago. The scent that still haunts his dreams. His hands tremble as he positions himself between Min-jun and Miho. A customer, Jaewon whispers, his voice barely steady. You're here for the wedding cake samples. I'll bring them out. Don't. Min-jun takes one step forward, and Jaewon's Omega instincts scream danger and home in the same breath. Don't lie to me. Not about this. Miho tilts his head, innocent and curious. Papa, you're shaking. Do you know the Thunder Man? Thunder Man. The nickname pierces through Min-jun's chest. This child, his child, has been alive for 5 years. 5 years of searching, of wondering why Jaewon vanished without a trace, of an arranged marriage to someone else because he thought his Omega was dead. How old is he? Min-jun's question comes out rough, almost broken. Jaewon's silence is answer enough. Behind Min-jun, 2 bodyguards shift uncomfortably. This was supposed to be a simple cake pickup for the boss's wedding next month. Instead, Kang Min-jun just discovered he's a father. And the Omega he never stopped loving has been hiding his son for 5 years. We need to talk. Now. Before I tell you what happened to her, subscribe to Heartverse BL, and comment where you're watching from. The bond scar on Jaewon's neck burns. After 5 years of suppressants and distance, feeling it flare to life is like touching a live wire. His knees nearly buckle, but he forces himself to stay upright, to keep his body between Min-jun and Miho. Mr. Kang, Jaewon tries again, his customer service voice cracking at the edges. Please wait in the front while I get your 5 years old. Min-jun's words aren't a question. His gaze hasn't left Miho, cataloging every detail with the same precision he uses to dismantle rival organizations. Born in winter, if I'm calculating correctly. Jaewon's silence condemns him. Miho, utterly oblivious to the tension suffocating the room, bounces on his toes. Are you here for a cake too? Papa makes the best cakes in the whole world. Yesterday we made one that looked like a castle with dragons and… Miho, sweetie, go upstairs. Jaewon's voice trembles despite his best effort. Now. But Papa. Now. The Omega command in his tone, rare and desperate, makes Miho's eyes widen. The boy's premature alpha instincts bristle at the submission demand, something that shouldn't be possible in a child so young. Another Kang trait. Another damning piece of evidence. Miho's lower lip quivers, but he obeys, his small feet padding toward the back staircase. He pauses at the doorway, looking back at Min-jun with those devastating crimson eyes. Bye, Thunder Man. The moment Miho disappears, Min-jun moves. 3 strides close the distance between them, and suddenly Jaewon is backed against the marble counter, Min-jun's hands caging him in. Not touching. Never touching without permission. But close enough that Jaewon can feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the familiar scent that makes his Omega hindbrain scream mate, home safe. Except it was never safe. That's why he ran. You were pregnant. Min-jun's voice is devastatingly quiet, the kind of quiet that precedes violence. When you disappeared, you were carrying my child. Min-jun. Do you know what I thought? Min-jun's control is fracturing, his alpha scent flooding the bakery with cedarwood and gunpowder and barely restrained fury. I thought you were dead, Jaewon. I tore apart 3 countries looking for your body. I attended a memorial service for you. And you were alive. With my son. Jaewon's suppressant patch burns against his skin, failing catastrophically under the onslaught of Min-jun's scent. You don't understand. Then make me understand. Min-jun's hand lifts, hovering near Jaewon's face but not quite touching. His fingers shake. Why did you run? Why didn't you tell me? Because your family wanted me dead. Because they threatened to cut our baby from my body and raise him without me. Because I loved you too much to watch you choose between me and your legacy. I can't do this here, Jaewon whispers. Not with Miho upstairs. Min-jun's jaw clenches, and for a moment, Jaewon sees the war raging behind those crimson eyes. The mafia boss who takes what he wants versus the man who's staring at the omega he loved like he's seeing a ghost. Tonight, Min-jun finally says, stepping back. Your apartment. 8 p.m. Min-jun. That's not a request, Omega. The formal designation lands like a brand. You owe me 5 years of answers. Min-jun arrived at exactly 8. No bodyguards. No entourage. Just a man in a black coat standing on the doorstep of a modest apartment above a bakery, looking like he'd rather tear the world apart than knock politely. Jaewon let him in without a word. The apartment was small, warm, cluttered with Miho's drawings taped to every wall, stars and rockets, and a recurring figure labeled Papa, with messy hearts around it. Min-jun's eyes swept the space with an expression Jaewon couldn't read. Something between hunger and grief. He's asleep, Jaewon said quietly, closing the bedroom door. So keep your voice down. You're giving me rules in a room the size of my closet. Min-jun's tone was flat, but there was no real bite. He looked exhausted. Dangerous men shouldn't look this tired. Jaewon didn't sit. Instead, he walked to the kitchen shelf, reached behind a row of cookbooks, and pulled out a weathered manila envelope. It was creased and soft from years of handling, the edges yellowed. He'd touched it 100 times in the dark, reminding himself why he could never go back. He placed it on the table between them. Open it. Min-jun studied Jaewon's face for a long moment before reaching for the envelope. He slid the contents out slowly. A single typed letter. 3 photographs. A clinical document with a hospital letterhead. Silence. The letter was addressed to Jaewon from Kang Doyan, Min-jun's cousin and the syndicate's second-in-command. The language was precise and surgical. It outlined a timeline. Jaewon would carry the child to term under supervised isolation. Upon delivery, the infant would be transferred to the Kang estate for proper upbringing befitting the bloodline. Jaewon himself would be removed from the equation permanently to prevent future claims or complications. The word removed was underlined. The photographs showed Jaewon from different angles. Surveillance shots. One outside his old apartment. One at a pharmacy purchasing prenatal vitamins. One sleeping in the bed he'd shared with Min-jun, taken through the bedroom window. Each photo had a small red circle drawn around his face. The clinical document was the worst. A consultation from a private physician regarding extraction protocols for an omega-carried pregnancy at 7 months and postnatal termination of parental bond through chemical severance. It was signed by a doctor Jaewon had never met, authorized by Kang Doyan, and co-signed by someone whose name made Min-jun's hands stop moving entirely. His father. The chairman's seal. Right there at the bottom. Min-jun didn't speak for a very long time. The paper trembled in his grip, and Jaewon watched the knuckles go white, then whiter. The alpha's scent shifted, cedarwood splintering into something acrid and volatile, like a forest catching fire from the inside. You thought I knew, Min-jun said finally. His voice was barely human. Jaewon swallowed hard. The letter came from your family's office. On your syndicate's letterhead. With your father's signature. His voice cracked. What was I supposed to think, Min-jun? That the head of the Kang family authorized my murder without his son's knowledge? Yes. The word was savage. Because that's exactly what happened. Min-jun stood so abruptly the chair scraped backward. He paced the tiny kitchen like a caged animal, one hand pressed over his mouth, the other crushing the clinical document. His breathing was ragged. Jaewon could smell the rage pouring off him in waves, thick and suffocating, and his omega instincts warred between fleeing and reaching out to soothe. He did neither. He stood his ground. I searched for you, Min-jun said, turning sharply. His crimson eyes were glassy. 2 years, Jaewon. Every contact I had. Every resource. I thought someone had taken you. I thought you were buried in some unmarked. He stopped. Swallowed. Doyan consoled me at your memorial. He stood beside me and told me to move on. He held my shoulder while His fist hit the wall. Just once. Controlled enough not to wake Miho. Violent enough to crack the plaster. Jaewon flinched but didn't step back. The silence stretched between them, filled with 5 years of grief and fury and wasted time. I will handle my family, Min-jun said. Each word was a death sentence delivered calmly. Every single one of them who touched this. But Jaewon, his voice fractured. I need time with my son. I am asking. Not demanding. Asking. Jaewon looked at the cracked wall. At the crushed document in Min-jun's fist. At the tears the most dangerous man in Korea refused to let fall. Tomorrow morning, Jaewon whispered. He likes his pancakes shaped like stars. Min-jun arrived every morning at 5:30. Not 5. Not 6. Exactly 5:30, when the sky was still dark and Jaewon was pulling the first trays of croissants from the oven. He never knocked. Just appeared in the doorway like a shadow gaining substance, holding 2 espressos. One for himself, one for Jaewon that always sat untouched on the counter until it went cold. He didn't speak unless spoken to. Didn't ask questions. Just sat at the corner table near the window, watching Jaewon work with an intensity that made the Omega's hands unsteady. On the third morning, Miho wandered downstairs in his star-patterned pajamas and climbed directly into Min-jun's lap like it was the most natural thing in the world. Min-jun froze. His entire body went rigid, hands hovering uncertainly before settling carefully on the boy's back. The expression on his face, raw and unguarded, made Jaewon turn away before the alpha saw him watching. "I dreamed about galaxies," Miho announced, yawning. "Did you know that some stars are already dead, but we still see their light?" "I didn't know that," Min-jun said quietly. "Papa says it's because light takes a long time to travel. Like memories." Miho tilted his head back to look at Min-jun's face. "Do you have memories that take a long time?" Min-jun's throat worked. "Yes." By the second week, Min-jun brought gifts. Nothing extravagant. He'd learned quickly that Jaewon would refuse anything expensive. Instead, he brought books. A children's encyclopedia of constellations. A pop-up book about the solar system. A telescope small enough for a 5-year-old to carry. Miho was completely charmed. Jaewon was completely terrified. The bond scar on his neck burned constantly now. The suppressant patches weren't working anymore. His body recognized its mate's proximity and was trying desperately to reconnect what Jaewon had spent 5 years severing. He'd wake in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, his Omega instincts screaming to go downstairs, to find Min-jun, to submit and let the alpha fix everything. He doubled his suppressant dosage. It only made him nauseous. "Papa," Miho said one morning, watching Min-jun leave through the bakery window. "Why does the Thunder Man make you smell sad and sweet at the same time?" Jaewon's hands stilled over the dough he was kneading. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "When he's here, you smell like jasmine and rain. But also like when you cry at night and think I'm asleep. Children shouldn't be this perceptive. Especially not children who barely understood their own premature alpha senses." "It's complicated," Jaewon whispered. "Do you love him?" The question landed like a blade between ribs. Before Jaewon could answer, Min-jun's phone rang in the bakery. He'd left it on the counter. The screen lit up with a name, Yoon-sera. What? Not a greeting. A challenge. Jaewon couldn't hear the other side, but he heard Min-jun's response. "The cake tasting is cancelled." A pause. Female voice, sharp even through the speaker. "I don't care what your mother planned. I'm not tasting wedding cakes." Min-jun's eyes never left Jaewon's face. "Cancel the order entirely." The voice rose, audible now. "Embarrass my family. Contractual obligation. Send the contract to my lawyer. We're done, Sarah." He hung up. The bakery fell into shocked silence. Miho looked between them with wide eyes, clutching his constellation book. "Min-jun," Jaewon started, but his voice failed. The alpha stepped closer, near enough that Jaewon could feel his scent wrapping around him like a physical thing. Cedarwood and gunpowder and desperate want. Min-jun's hand lifted toward Jaewon's face, trembling, before he forced it down. "I can't do it," Min-jun said roughly. "I can't stand in a room and pretend to plan a future with someone else while you're—" He stopped. Breathed. "While my son asks me about dead stars and my Omega looks at me like I'm going to disappear. I'm not your Omega anymore. Liar." Min-jun's voice dropped to something devastatingly gentle. "Your scent gives you away, Jaewon. You still want me. The bond never broke. Wanting you almost got me killed." "I know." Min-jun stepped back, giving space that neither of them wanted. "But I'm not who I was 5 years ago. And I'm not leaving again. So get used to me." He walked out, leaving his untouched espresso behind. Miho tugged Jaewon's sleeve. "Papa, you're crying." Jaewon touched his face. His fingers came away wet. "Yeah," he whispered. "I know. Before I tell you what happened to her, subscribe to Heartverse BL, and comment where you're watching from." Jaewon was piping buttercream roses when his phone rang. The kindergarten's number. His heart stuttered. "Mr. Seo? This is Ms. Park. Miho is fine, but there was an incident at pickup today." Jaewon was out the door before she finished the sentence. He found Miho sitting in the school office, swinging his legs and clutching his constellation book. Unharmed. unbothered, completely oblivious to the tension radiating from the teacher standing guard beside him. Baby. Jaewon dropped to his knees, hands frantically checking Miho over. Are you okay? What happened? I'm fine, Papa. Miho beamed. A pretty lady talked to me. She smelled like ice and flowers. Jaewon's blood went cold. Ms. Park cleared her throat. A woman approached Miho at the gate. She wasn't on the approved pickup list, so I intervened immediately. She claimed to be a family friend, but what did she look like? Tall, late 20s, very elegant, alpha based on her presence. Ms. Park's expression tightened. She was unsettling, Mr. Seo. The way she looked at Miho wasn't friendly. Jaewon's hands were shaking. He turned to his son, forcing his voice calm. What did the lady say to you, sweetheart? She asked if I went to school here and said I had an interesting smell. Miho tilted his head, trying to remember. Then she asked about my mother. I told her I don't have a mother, just Papa, and she laughed. It was a weird laugh. Anything else? Oh, she said pretty things break easily in this city. Miho frowned. What does that mean, Papa? I'm not a thing. The world tilted sideways. Jaewon barely remembered thanking Ms. Park. Barely remembered strapping Miho into his booster seat. His hands fumbled with his phone, muscle memory dialing a number he'd deleted 5 years ago, but never forgotten. Min-jun answered on the first ring. Jaewon. She approached him. Jaewon's voice cracked, omega panic bleeding through every syllable. Your fiancé went to Miho's school. She threatened him, Min-jun. She threatened our son. The silence on the other end was arctic. Where are you? Min-jun's voice was utterly calm. The kind of calm that preceded bloodshed. In the car. Outside the school. Lock the doors. Don't move. I'm 8 minutes away. It took 6. The black sedan pulled up with 2 SUVs flanking it like predators. Min-jun emerged in a 3-piece suit that probably cost more than Jaewon's monthly rent, his expression carved from ice and fury. He moved directly to the driver's side window, and Jaewon unlocked it with trembling fingers. Min-jun's eyes swept over them both, Miho still cheerfully oblivious in the back, Jaewon barely holding himself together in the front. The alpha's scent spiked protective and violent, making Jaewon's omega instincts keen. Tell me exactly what happened. Jaewon repeated everything. Ms. Park's call. Miho's innocent recounting. The message wrapped in a smile. Pretty things break easily in this city. Min-jun's jaw could have been cut from granite. He pulled out his phone and made a single call. Locate Yunsera. Now. A pause. I don't care if she's at temple with her mother. Find her and keep eyes on her until I say otherwise. He hung up and turned to one of the men from the SUVs. Assign 2-person rotating detail. The child and the omega. Discreet. If I see them, you're fired. If anyone gets within 10 feet of either of them without clearance, put them down. Yes, sir. Min-jun crouched beside Jaewon's window, bringing himself to eye level. Miho will have protection starting now. You will too. Min-jun, I don't need. Yes, you do. His voice softened just slightly. And for once, you're going to let me protect what's mine. I'm not yours. Jaewon. Min-jun reached through the window, his hand hovering near Jaewon's face. Not touching. Asking. Let me do this. Please. It was the please that broke him. Jaewon leaned into the touch, just barely, and felt Min-jun's thumb brush his cheekbone. The bond scar burned hot and bright. She threatened our child, Jaewon whispered. I know. Min-jun's eyes held something dark and ancient and utterly merciless. And she's going to regret that for however long I allow her to keep breathing. From the back seat, Miho piped up. Thunder Man, do you want to see my drawing of Andromeda? Min-jun's expression shifted instantly, from cold executioner to careful father. I would love to see it. But when he looked back at Jaewon, the promise in his eyes was clear. Yunsera had just made a fatal mistake. The executive office on the 14th floor of Kong Tower was designed for intimidation. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls overlooking Seoul's skyline. A conference table that could seat 20. And today, just 2 men facing each other across polished black marble. Kang Doyan sat with the casual arrogance of someone who believed his position was untouchable. Second in command of the Kang syndicate. The chairman's nephew. Min-jun's cousin and once his most trusted advisor. He was smiling when Min-jun entered. You called an emergency board meeting for this? Doyan gestured at the empty room. Dramatic, even for you. Min-jun didn't sit. He placed a manila envelope on the table between them. The same weathered envelope Jaewon had kept hidden for 5 years. Open it. Doyen's smile faltered. Min-jun, open it or I will make you. The threat in Min-jun's voice was glacier cold. Doyen's alpha instincts recognized danger when it was standing 6 feet away in a perfectly tailored suit, radiating lethal intent. He opened the envelope. His face went carefully blank as he scanned the contents. The letter, the surveillance photos, the clinical document with his signature at the bottom. Where did you get this? From the Omega you tried to have killed. Min-jun's voice was conversational. Pleasant, even. The kind of tone he used right before someone disappeared. From the father of my child. From my mate, who's been living in hiding for 5 years because you threatened to cut our son from his body and dispose of him like trash. Doyen set the papers down slowly. You don't understand the context. Explain it to me. He was a nobody, Min-jun. A common Omega with no bloodline, no family, no value beyond warming your bed. Doyen leaned back, composure returning. You were obsessed with him. It was affecting your judgment, making you weak. The family needed you focused, not playing house with some. Min-jun's hand slammed down on the table hard enough to crack the marble. The sound echoed through the glass room. Outside, through the transparent walls, a dozen syndicate members pretended not to watch. Choose your next words very carefully, Min-jun said softly. Doyen raised his hands in mock surrender. I was protecting the Kang legacy. Our bloodline is pure alpha for 6 generations. Introducing Omega genetics, especially from a common. You signed in order to murder my mate and steal my child. I signed in order to preserve what our family built. Doyen stood now, finally showing real emotion. You think love matters in our world? You think that Omega would have survived the politics, the rivals, the expectations? I did you a favor. Min-jun pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. A projector hummed to life, displaying security footage on the glass wall. Doyen, 6 years ago, meeting with hired operatives outside a nondescript building. Doyen, tracking Jaewon through the city. Doyen, handing over cash to men whose faces were in criminal databases. Another tap. Financial records. Payments from Doyen's private accounts to 3 different contractors, all dated around Jaewon's disappearance. I've spent the last week reconstructing everything you did, Min-jun said. Every payment, every meeting, every lie you told me while I mourned someone you drove away. Doyen's mask finally cracked. Your father approved it. My father knew you sent the letter. He didn't approve the murder contract. Min-jun's voice was sharp as a blade. I've already spoken with him. He thought you were simply encouraging Jaewon to leave. He didn't know you planned to kill him after the birth. Details. Details that separate exile from execution. The glass door opened. 2 security personnel entered, flanking the room. Doyen looked at them, then at Min-jun, and something like understanding dawned on his face. You're choosing him over family. He is my family. Min-jun stepped closer, and his alpha presence flooded the room, suffocating, absolute, undeniable. Seo Jaewon is my bonded mate. Miho is my son and my heir. You threaten them both. You're alive right now only because you share my blood. Don't test that mercy. The board will never accept. The board answers to me. Min-jun gestured to the windows, where syndicate members watched in absolute silence. As of this moment, you are stripped of your position, your titles, and your access to Kang resources. You have 48 hours to leave Seoul. If I see you again, I will forget we're related. Doyen's face twisted with fury and disbelief. You'll destroy the Kang legacy for an Omega? Min-jun walked to the door, pausing at the threshold. His crimson eyes, the same eyes his son inherited, fixed on his cousin with absolute certainty. No, he said quietly. I'll rebuild it into something worth inheriting. The door closed behind him with a finality that sounded like a coffin sealing shut. The mahogany table in the private club was long enough to keep their scents from clashing, but the atmosphere was already toxic. Yoon Sarah sat with her hands elegantly clasped, her expression a mask of pristine, terrifying calm. Across the table, the chairman, Min-jun's father, looked older, his silent disapproval heavy in the air, yet he made no move to stop his son. The power had shifted. Doyen's exile had proven who truly ruled the Kang syndicate now. Min-jun pushed the voided alliance contract across the polished wood. The terms are settled. Your family will receive the port distribution rights in the south as compensation. The engagement is officially dissolved. Sarah didn't even look at the paper. Instead, she let out a soft, melodic laugh that made the guards at the door shift uncomfortably. All of this for an Omega who ran away. You are trading a dynasty for a bakery owner, Min-jun. I am securing my family, Min-jun replied, his voice flat. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes narrowing into cold slits. I hope your little Omega understands what he is taking from me. And I hope he is strong enough to keep it. Because I don't lose gracefully, and things that belong to me do not get replaced so easily. She stood up, smoothing her skirt with slow, deliberate movements. Enjoy your domestic peace, Chairman Kang. While it lasts. As the door clicked shut, the chairman finally sighed, staring at his hands. You have made a dangerous enemy to protect a common boy. I protected my mate, father, Min-jun said, standing. Something you failed to do. While the syndicate fractured, Jaewon was fighting a war inside his own body. In the kitchen of Sweet Haven, the sweet smell of baking sugar couldn't mask the bitter scent of ash. Proximity to a bonded mate after 5 years of heavy suppressants was turning his system against him. The phantom fever burned beneath his skin, his pulse hammering against the uncompleted mating mark on his neck. Bond sickness. His body was starving for the alpha scent it had denied for half a decade. He reached for a tray of hot tarts, but his vision suddenly grayed. The floor rushed up to meet him. Jaewon, his assistant and closest friend, Min-woo, caught him by the shoulders, dragging him away from the hot stove just in time. Jaewon slumped against the flour sacks, his breathing shallow, sweat pooling at his collarbone. That's it, we're calling him, Min-woo muttered frantically, reaching for his phone. You're burning up. Your body is rejecting the suppressants because he's standing in your lobby every single day. No, Jaewon gasped, grabbing Min-woo's wrist with trembling fingers. Don't call him. I can't look weak, Min-woo. If I break now, he'll think I need a savior. I need to be strong enough to stand on my own. He forced himself back to his feet, swallowing down the dry nausea, hiding the tremor in his hands just as the bell above the bakery door chimed. That evening, Min-jun didn't bring a book. He arrived carrying a large wooden case, his steps heavy but quiet as he entered the apartment. Miho immediately abandoned his drawings, his eyes sparkling as Min-jun opened the box to reveal a beautifully polished, vintage brass telescope. For looking at Andromeda, Min-jun said, his voice dropping to a warm, gentle register as he knelt beside the boy. For the next hour, Jaewon watched from the kitchen doorway, holding a cup of herbal tea to soothe his aching chest. Min-jun carried Miho to the balcony, patiently adjusting the heavy brass instrument, pointing out the constellations. Miho laughed, his small hands holding onto Min-jun's broad shoulders, completely safe in the presence of the alpha who had once commanded armies of ruthless men. Miho looked up from the eyepiece, his crimson eyes reflecting the starlight. He looked at Min-jun, then back at Jaewon, his expression suddenly serious. Are you going to stay with us? The boy asked innocently. Or are you like the dead stars? Are you going to go away and leave us with just the memory? The silence that followed was deafening. Min-jun looked over Miho's head, his dark, tortured eyes locking onto Jaewon's pale face in the doorway. I'm staying, Min-jun whispered, and though he was looking at his son, the promise was meant entirely for the Omega standing in the dark. For as long as your papa will let me. Before I tell you what happened to her, subscribe to Heartverse BL, and comment where you're watching from. The playground was full of children at 4:15. Laughter, shouting, the screech of swings and the thud of small feet on rubber mulch. Jaewon arrived at 4:20, scanning the chaos for a familiar head of dark hair and crimson eyes. He didn't find him. What he found instead was Miho's backpack, the one covered in glow-in-the-dark stars, abandoned beside the jungle gym. A juice box leaking into the dirt, and the faint, fading scent trail of his son leading directly to the curb before vanishing completely. Jaewon's world collapsed into a single, primal scream. Miho! Parents turned. Children stared. Someone asked if he needed help, but Jaewon couldn't hear anything over the roar of blood in his ears. His Omega instincts went into freefall. Every protective impulse, every biological imperative to shield his child igniting at once. His hands shook so violently he could barely unlock his phone. Min-jun answered before the first ring finished. He's gone. Jaewon's voice broke into something inhuman. Min-jun, he's gone. Someone took him. His bag is here, but I can't find his scent, I can't. Where are you? Honggang Park. East entrance. The playground near. Don't move. I'm coming. The line didn't disconnect. Jaewon heard Min-jun barking orders in the background. Full mobilization, every available operative, pull traffic cameras within a 3-block radius, now. The sound of car doors slamming. Tires screeching. Min-jun stayed on the line the entire time, his voice a steady anchor while Jaewon's world spun apart. Breathe, Jaewon. I need you to breathe. Tell me exactly what you see. By the time Min-jun's convoy arrived 8 minutes later, Jaewon had given him every detail. The abandoned backpack. The juice box Miho had been drinking from at pickup yesterday, still half full. The way the scent trail just stopped, like his son had been lifted clean off the ground. Min-jun emerged from the lead vehicle with 6 men flanking him, his expression carved from Arctic stone. He moved directly to Jaewon, gripping the Omega's shoulders hard enough to ground him. We will find him, Min-jun said, and it wasn't a comfort. It was a death sentence delivered calmly. I need you to trust me. One of Min-jun's men approached with a tablet, security footage already queued. 2 black vans. Professional execution. Miho had been playing near the edge of the park when a woman approached. Someone he didn't recognize but who didn't trigger alarm. She'd offered him something. He'd followed her 3 steps before 2 men moved in from either side, lifting him efficiently into the first van. The whole extraction took 11 seconds. Jaewon watched it 4 times before his knees buckled. Min-jun caught him, pulling the Omega against his chest with one arm while his other hand never stopped moving. Typing coordinates, sending orders, his voice a constant stream of lethal precision. Within 2 hours, they had a lead. One of the vans had been tracked to a shell company warehouse on the outskirts of Seoul. Min-jun's intelligence team cross-referenced the property ownership with known associates. Yoon Sera's family name appeared 3 times in the holding company's records. The interrogation happened in a basement Jaewon didn't know existed beneath Min-jun's corporate building. The captured operative, one of the van drivers pulled from a traffic stop, was zip-tied to a chair, bleeding from a broken nose. Min-jun stood in front of him, still wearing his perfectly tailored suit, not a hair out of place. He looked calm, reasonable. He pulled out a pair of leather gloves and put them on slowly. I'm going to ask you once, Min-jun said pleasantly. Where is my son? The operative spat blood. I don't know what you're. Min-jun broke his finger. The scream echoed off concrete walls. Jaewon stood in the corner, watching, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. Let me rephrase, Min-jun continued, as if he'd done nothing more violent than adjust a tie. You have 9 more fingers, 10 toes, and 2 kneecaps. Every lie costs you 1. Where is my son? It took 3 more fingers before the operative gave up the warehouse location. Min-jun pulled out his phone, already mobilizing his tactical team. Jaewon stepped forward, his voice hoarse but steady. I'm coming with you. No. Min-jun. No asterisk, the alpha turned, and his eyes were devastated and furious and absolutely immovable. I will bring our son home. But I need to know you're safe. Please, Jaewon. Let me do this. Jaewon wanted to fight, wanted to scream. But he saw the terror Min-jun was barely containing beneath the cold exterior. The same terror eating Jaewon alive. Bring him home, Jaewon whispered. Min-jun cupped his face with blood-stained gloves. I swear it. As he walked toward the exit, Min-jun's final words were soft enough that only Jaewon heard them. And if they've hurt him, I'll burn her entire bloodline to ash. The warehouse district was a graveyard of rusted metal and broken windows. Min-jun's team moved through the darkness like shadows with teeth, 6 men, all ex-military, all loyal enough to die for their boss without question. Min-jun led from the front, his gun an extension of his hand, his focus narrowed to a single burning purpose. Find his son. Bring him home. Kill anyone who stood in the way. The first guard died quietly, a suppressed shot to the chest before he could reach for his radio. The second tried to run. He made it 3 steps. Min-jun didn't break stride, stepping over the body without a glance, his entire being attuned to the faint scent signature he'd only known for 2 weeks but would recognize anywhere. Miho. His son smelled like Jaewon's jasmine and something sharper. The premature alpha markers that shouldn't exist in a child so young, but blazed like a beacon in the stale air. They breached the main warehouse floor in 40 seconds. 4 operatives guarding the perimeter went down in a coordinated strike, clean, efficient, surgical. Min-jun moved through the chaos with terrifying calm, his crimson eyes scanning, searching, until he saw it. A locked door at the back. Steel reinforced. Bolted from the outside. He didn't bother with the lock. He shot it twice and kicked the door open. The room was small, dark, and in the corner, curled up on a blanket with his constellation book clutched to his chest, was Miho. The boy's head snapped up, crimson eyes wide with fear that shifted instantly to confusion, then recognition. His small body trembled, but he didn't cry. Kong blood. Even at 5 years old, even terrified, he didn't break. Thunder Man. Miho's voice was so small it shattered something in Min-jun's chest. Min-jun holstered his weapon and crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping to his knees in front of his son. His hands hovered, shaking, before carefully reaching out. "I've got you," Min-jun whispered, his voice cracking for the first time in a decade. "You're safe now. I've got you." Miho hesitated for only a heartbeat before launching himself into Min-jun's arms. The impact nearly knocked Min-jun backward. He caught his son instinctively, pulling the small body against his chest, and the world stopped. 5 years of searching. 5 years of grief. 5 years of not knowing this child existed, all collapsing into this single, perfect moment of found. Min-jun's alpha instincts roared to life, not the cold, controlled authority he used to command the syndicate, but something ancient and absolute. Protect. Claim. Mine. He scent-marked Miho without thinking, his face buried in the boy's dark hair, his hands trembling as they cradled the fragile weight of his entire world. Miho burrowed into Min-jun's neck, seeking the warmth and safety his Omega parent had taught him to recognize. His small voice muffled against Min-jun's collar. "You smell like Papa, but stronger." Min-jun broke. Not visibly. Not in a way anyone watching would recognize. But inside, every wall he'd built, every bit of control he'd maintained, crumbled into dust. This was his son. His child. The product of a love he'd thought dead and a bond he'd believed severed. "I'm taking you home," Min-jun managed, his voice wrecked. "To Papa. He's waiting for you." He stood, cradling Miho against his chest with one arm, while his other hand retrieved his weapon. His team had cleared the path, but as they moved through the warehouse, one final operative appeared from behind a shipping container, weapon rising. Min-jun didn't hesitate. He turned his body to shield Miho and fired twice. The man dropped. "Stay down, buddy," Min-jun murmured against Miho's hair. Almost there. Outside, the night air hit them like a baptism. And there, standing beside the vehicles, held back by 2 of Min-jun's men but straining forward with desperate, wild eyes, was Jaewon. "Miho!" Min-jun barely had time to kneel before Jaewon crashed into them both, his hands frantically checking Miho over, his Omega scent flooded with relief and jasmine and breaking sweetness. Baby, are you hurt?" "Did they?" "I'm okay, Papa," Miho said, though his voice trembled now, the bravery finally cracking. "The Thunder Man found me. Just like you said he would." Jaewon's eyes snapped to Min-jun's, swimming with tears. "I didn't. You told him I'd come," Min-jun said quietly. Jaewon's face crumpled. He reached for Miho, and Min-jun passed their son over, watching as Jaewon clutched the boy to his chest and finally let himself break. His legs gave out. Min-jun caught them both, wrapping his arms around his entire world, holding them together as Jaewon sobbed into his shoulder and Miho clung to them both. "I've got you," Min-jun whispered into Jaewon's hair. "Both of you. And I'm never letting go again." 6 weeks changed everything and nothing at all. He'd also started therapy. Twice a week, every week, sitting in an office and unpacking generations of toxic legacy with a professional who didn't flinch when he talked about the violence bred into his bones. Jaewon had asked him to go. So he went. And every morning, he still showed up at Sweet Haven with 2 espressos, watching Jaewon bake while Miho did homework at the corner table. Not demanding. Not claiming. Just present. The grand opening of Sweet Haven's second location in Gangnam was everything Jaewon had dreamed of and worked toward for 5 years. The storefront gleamed with floor-to-ceiling windows, elegant gold lettering, and a line of customers that wrapped around the block. Media cameras flashed. Food bloggers documented every detail. Friends and loyal customers from the original location filled the space with warmth and celebration. And walking through the door with a 5-year-old boy riding on his shoulders, both of them grinning, was Kang Min-jun. Miho wore a tiny bow tie that matched his father's. Min-jun wore a suit that probably cost more than the espresso machine, but his expression was soft, proud, and entirely focused on the Omega standing behind the counter in a flour-dusted apron. Jaewon's breath caught. Min-jun approached slowly, gently lowering Miho to the ground. The boy immediately ran to his papa, chattering about the huge crowd and all the fancy people. But Min-jun stayed where he was, his crimson eyes never leaving Jaewon's face. Then, in front of everyone, the media, the syndicate members who'd come out of loyalty and curiosity, the friends who'd supported Jaewon through 5 years of hiding, Min-jun knelt. The bakery went silent. Seo Jaewon, Min-jun said, his voice steady but raw with emotion. I'm not here to claim you. I'm not here to demand anything based on bonds or bloodlines or rights I don't deserve. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, but didn't open it. Not yet. I'm here to ask. Let me be your partner. In business, in parenting, in life. On your terms. Jaewon's hands trembled. Tears spilled down his cheeks, but his voice was strong when he spoke. I have conditions. Name them. Equal partnership. In everything. No decisions about Miho without both of us agreeing. Therapy continues, for both of us. And the bond. Jaewon touched his neck, where the scar still burned faintly. We rebuild it slowly. Together. Not because biology demands it, but because we choose it. Min-jun's smile was devastating. Done. All of it. Every single word. Min-jun opened the box, revealing 2 simple platinum bands. I'm not the man I was 5 years ago, Jaewon. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of the family you built without me. Jaewon pulled Min-jun to his feet and kissed him in front of everyone. The bakery erupted in applause. Miho cheered loudest of all. Later that night, long after the crowds dispersed and the media left, Jaewon and Min-jun stood in the industrial kitchen of the new location. Miho slept peacefully in the small apartment upstairs, his constellation book tucked under his arm. Downstairs, Min-jun awkwardly held a piping bag while Jaewon guided his hands with patient amusement. You're squeezing too hard. It's not an interrogation technique. Everything I do is an interrogation technique. Jaewon laughed, the sound bright and free, and adjusted Min-jun's grip. The alpha's scent had softened over the weeks, still cedarwood and gunpowder, but tempered now with something warmer. Something like home. On Min-jun's neck, just above his collar, a fresh mating mark gleamed. Jaewon's bite, given 3 nights ago in the quiet dark of Min-jun's bedroom, with whispered promises and trembling hands. Completing what had been broken 5 years before. Min-jun had worn it proudly to the syndicate meeting that morning, visible and deliberate. The families had stared. Whispered. Judged. He hadn't cared. You know the families will talk, Jaewon murmured now, watching Min-jun carefully pipe a lopsided rose. Min-jun set down the piping bag and pulled Jaewon into his arms, tucking the omega against his chest where he fit perfectly. Let them, he whispered into Jaewon's hair. I've got everything I need right here. The end.